And hello and welcome. My name is Martin, and today we're going to be creating a pause menu. So a menu that you can hit a button on your keyboard. In this case, it'll be the letter P. And from there, what it'll do is it'll pause the game and leave the game paused indefinitely until you hit the P button again, or the button that you've assigned to unpause the game, and then the gameplay will start. Okay, so it's going to be a widget. We're going to need to design and create a new widget for this. So let's go ahead and make that to start. So we'll right click. We will go to user interface. We will create a widget blueprint. And this one we will call it pause menu. Pause underscore menu. Oh, or widget, I should say. Because it is a widget. Okay, so now we have the pause widget. Let's double click into the pause widget and open it up. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is type in up here horizontal box. And we want to grab one and put it into our canvas. And we want to go ahead and click on the box and get this to the full size of whatever your screen is. So again, I'm going to pull down just to see what my full size was, 1920 by 1080. So I'm going to click on the box again and type those numbers in. So this is going to be 1920 by 1080. Oops, not that big. And that's actually the position. So let's go back to 0 and let's do it here. 1920, there we go, by 1080. All right, now I do want this thing anchor-wise to spread itself to the entire size of the page. Okay, so now that we have our horizontal box in, what we want to do is type in vertical box here in the palettes panel. Let's grab the vertical box and put it inside the horizontal box. If we click on the vertical box, we'll see that it looks like this long line. From here, what we want to hit is center and center. Okay, so we're going to say fill, and then we're going to go horizontal alignment and put it in the center, and we're going to go vertical alignment and put it in the center. And what will look like is like these two little white tabs with arrows pointing out of them, which is good. This is where we want to be. Now from there, we're going to right click on the vertical box here in the hierarchy panel, and we're going to say we're going to wrap this with a size box. And what that size box is going to allow us to do, and we have to click on size box to get these options, is we're going to override both the width and the height. So let's make the width, let's say 700, and let's make the height of this, let's say 500. And now we have, between the horizontal box and the vertical box, a evenly spaced box that we will then put our buttons into. So let's go ahead and do that. In the palettes panel, let's get rid of that word and let's type in button. And we will see that we have a button. And we're going to grab this and put it inside the vertical box, right? So what that does is it puts the button actually inside the box and goes ahead and fills the space out so that you don't actually have to make the buttons or try to realign them later or any of that kind of wonderful stuff. With the button there, let's go ahead and put some text in there. So now we have, and we are looking for the word text. Toby, do not make sounds, please. Thank you. Play with something that doesn't make sound. Okay. So we're going to grab a text, and we're going to put that, hey, stop. We're going to put that inside the button, and once we've got the text in there, we're going to go ahead and name, or call this the resume game or the resume button. So in the text box, let's go ahead and call this resume. And let's say resume game so we know exactly what we're talking about. We'll go ahead and make this 50, which is a good button size. Again, remember you have the ability to go through and change the colors on the event overlap of the button, the standard state of the button, so you don't have to leave yours as a boring button like mine. But for the sake of making this a shorter tutorial, we're going to do that. Now the other thing we also have is that this is touching the very top of the box, right? So we do have when the button is selected, this button up, or this option underneath details panel that says padding. And if we were to hit the top padding and let's say put in something like 20, you would see that this would now start to move down. So this is sort of like like a Word document when you're trying to set your margins, right? This would be the top margin. So let's type, let's say 50 in that box, and let's see if we can get that down just a little bit more. And that looks good enough. Now from there, what we'll do is let's go ahead and duplicate this button. We'll need at least one more. So we'll right click on this. We'll say duplicate. That puts another button immediately underneath it with exactly the same kind of padding. So now you have this really nice, really ordered way of setting up your buttons where you don't have to worry about them being misaligned. With the second button selected, we'll double click in there and we'll go ahead and call this one Quit Game. So let's type in Quiet Game, game. There we go. And all right, so now we have the two buttons that we need. The only thing that we need to do at this point, let's go ahead and hit compile and save before we move on, is that we have to give the functionality to these buttons, right? So if we're talking about the resume button and the quit button, we then have to make the code for it. So let's right click on, and actually we can't do these because there's a couple of functions. The quit button we can go ahead and do, but the resume button we can't because there's actually a function that we need to set up in the main character. And so we'll come back to doing these, but we will come back and put the code into these buttons. So for now, we're going to hit compile and save. So compile, save, and we can go ahead and minimize that. All right, so from here, what we need to do is we need to go into our first person character. So let's go to first person BP. Let's go into blueprints. Let's go into first person character. And let's scroll out to, and what we're actually looking for is to generate two functions. So right now we're going to have to come over to our My Blueprints panel, and there you will see the functions underneath Graph above Micro. And let's go ahead and hit plus to create one function, and we're going to go ahead and call this Pause Game. Okay, and then we're going to create another function, and we're going to call this one Unpause Game, because you got to have a function for a pause and an unpause. All right, so with the Pause Game selected button, so double click on that one again so that you're actually inside the Pause Game one, and let's go ahead and start writing what we need for this. Okay, so right off of this, we're going to have to click or type in. So we're going to drag off of the pause game function and type in set game paused. Okay, so that will then pause the game. Now the next thing we need to ask is this valid? And the reason why we're typing this in is because if you hit the letter P while the panel or while the pause button is already in, we don't need to generate another widget. The widget's already there. So let's type in is valid. And off of the bottom node, we're going to type in the not valid, meaning that if we hit the letter P and there's no widget created, we need to create the widget. So let's go ahead and type in off of not valid and type in create widget. All right. We need to pick the widget class, which in this case is going to be the pause menu. We want that menu to come up. And we want this to be usable through the get player controller. All right. So then that way the pause menu, when it comes up, will still have access to the player's control, or the player will still have access to this. From there, we're going to generate a variable off of the return from this. So we're going to right-click off of a return value and say promote to a variable. That will then give us a variable. We have then created a variable that we can then use later. And from here, now we have the ability now we have to tie this into the viewport. So we're going to right click off of the set and we're going to type in add viewport. All right. So now we have the add viewport, and don't forget to connect the other signal there. Now we have the viewport here, so we don't need to create or generate another node that says viewport. We'll just skip right to the end. So now what this function says is when we push or when we pause the game, then check to see if we already have a widget. If we have a widget, then don't worry about it. Just make it go to the viewport. Make sure that it's still going to the viewport. And if we don't have the widget, then we need to create one. And we have to make sure that the first player's information goes through that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to want to do is make sure that we have the mouse and that is the only thing that is being used. So let's pull off of here and let's type in set input. Input. Okay, and we'll see these three options down here: set input game mode and UI or user interface, set just the game mode only, or set mode UI or user interface only. And the one that we're looking for is the one at the bottom, because all we want at this point is the user interface and not the fact that the character is moving around or any of the gameplay there. So from here, we're going to want to make sure that again we get the player's controller. So let's type in player controller. So get player controller, and we're going to want to make sure that this is available for the pause menu. So let's go ahead and actually at this point we should just be able to pull in our reference from the variable that we just created. So let's right click and let's say pause menu, or let's say get pause menu, and let's take the sensitivity thing off. And oh, I know what happened. We didn't name our variable, so it's just sitting down there as new variable 0, and it's not actually saying pause menu. So when I looked for it, I couldn't find it. So let's go back and reset the name for our variable. So off of the create pause widget, let's come up here and let's actually name this variable pause menu. So pause menu, and we can leave it blue. It's the type of widget that we need. So let's actually call that pause. Wow, my dyslexia is kicking in hard. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's how you spell it. All right, so now we have it down there. All right, so now that we have that, we should be able to drag off of this and type in get pause menu, and there it is. Wonderful. See what happens when we don't name our things. All right, and then the only other thing that we need off of this is for the mouse to actually be shown. So off of the mode UI only, let's set up show mouse, and let's type in set for that. We do want the mouse to be there, and we again want this to come off of the get player controller. There it is. Okay, fantastic. So let's look at this code again. So when we hit the pause button, and I'm sorry, I'm glad to see, this is why I check my code. So I want it to be paused. So make sure that you hit that button. This is very crucial. All right, so we then want to check to see if this is valid, whether there's one already there or whether we need to create one. If there is one, then just go ahead and add it to the viewport. If it's not already on the screen, go ahead and create it and set it, then add it to the viewport. From there, we're talking about the controls that we need for the menu. So we're telling it, hey, all we want is the user interface stuff. We don't want anything else. We want that to go to the player controller, and we want that to affect the pause menu. And then from there, we want the mouse. We want to be able to see it, and we want to get the player's controls to be able to control that. So once we've got that, let's hit compile and save. And we now need to write the code for the second piece, which is basically reversing this. So the unpause menu or the unpause function will do just the opposite of what the pause function will do. It'll give all our control back. It'll get rid of the widgets, and at that point we should be entering back into the game itself. So let's click on unpaused game so that we're actually opening up the function for the unpaused. And let's go ahead and start writing the code for that. So, okay, so what we're going to want to do is go into the unpaused game, double click on unpaused game, so then that way we open up the function for us, unpaused game, and what we're going to type in here is set game paused. We're looking for the function, and that looks correct. Okay, so last time we checked this because we did want to pause the game. This time we're saying that this is a untrue statement, that we don't want this to be true, so we're not going to click the value in there to make it a true statement. From there, we're going to right click and type in remove all widgets. So remove all widgets. That will destroy or get rid of or remove from the viewport the widget for the pause menu. From there, we need to reset the game mode. So let's type in set input mode, and this needs to be game only so that we're going back into the game mode. And again, we need this to come off of the get controller player. So get player controller. Okay. And then we need to remove the mouse, right? So we need to get rid of the mouse. So we're going to right click off of this. Again, type in show mouse, and we're going to say set. And we are not going to click the mouse. We're going to leave the mouse unclicked so that it disappears, basically. So we're saying we don't want to see it. And we're going to, again, make the target of this get player controller. All right, so now we have the code for the second function. So we should be able to hit compile and save. And let's go back and read this real quick. So when we unpause the game, we want the it to be unpaused. So we're saying this is the function. We're going to, once it's triggered, we want it to unpause. We want it to remove all the widgets. We want the game mode to go back to game mode only. We want that to get the player controller, and we want the mouse to go away. All right, so from here, we just need to set up the key that is actually going to generate the pause menu for us. So from here, what we'll need to do is go back to our main page, and we're going to go to this button up here called Settings. And in Settings, we're going to scroll down to Project Settings, and that'll open up this box. And from here, we're going to go underneath Engine, and we're going to scroll down until we see Input. Okay, so we're going to want to go to Input. It's going to be underneath Bindings. We're going to go to Action Mapping, and we're going to see that we have our jump button, our fire button, and our reverse VR button, which is, I assume, just part of what's going on with this first-person player. If we were to click on the fire button, we'll see that we have the left mouse, and so we'll see that we have different ways that we can trigger the fire button there. So what we want to do now is we want to create or add a new action mapping. And in that action mapping, we're actually going to call this one pause. All right. And then we want to associate that with the letter P. So we're going to click here underneath none. We're going to go to keyboard, and we're going to scroll down until we see the letter P. Okay. So essentially what this is going to do is that every time we hit the letter P in the game at any point, we get the pause menu. So once that's there, I don't believe that there's anything that we need to save. It's already part of the game mode, so we should be able to close this. And at this point, we should be able to test. So let's see if everything is working correctly. I'm going to go to, let's say, my first player map. Okay, I'm going to push play so that I'm actually in the map. And we're probably not hearing the gunshots because I have my volume down. Okay, so now we're hearing them. And let's hit the letter P. And no pause menu. Okay, let's figure out why that's not working. Okay, so we just tried to test just to see if we could get we know that the buttons are not connected right now, but just to see if we could actually see the pause menu when we hit the letter P, and that was not happening. So there was actually, I went through the code and I checked on a couple of things, and there was one mistake that I'll go ahead and I'll allude to real quick, and that's going to be under the first person character. So let's go back to first person BP. Let's go to blueprints. Let's go to first person character. And originally what I had was, and let me delete this guy. Originally what I had was this connected like this. This is incorrect. So we're going to have to remove, or let's say break the link here. And what we actually want attached to this is, let's get menu paused. So then that way it's the same as what's going on over here. So that was the first thing. Now the second thing, so let's go ahead and hit compile and save. The second thing is that we actually need to generate a paused event for the character. So still in the first person character, we're going to move over into the event graph. Okay, so this is where we set up everything earlier for how we're going to take damage and how we're going to get the enter and the end buttons to work. Over here somewhere, let's just add another one, and let's type in input action and let's see if we can separate that. So input action pause. Okay, and this will then generate the actual pause of the pausing of the game. So when this button is pressed or when this action has been created, let's go ahead and hit pause game. Okay, so this is, let's go ahead and highlight that. Let's right click on it, and because it's a little piece of code, let's make it feel a little bit bigger, and we'll call it pause the game. All right, so let's hit compile and save. And now let's check and see if we get our pause menu. So we're in the game, let's hit pause. Yay, there's our pause menu. So right now, the resume button and the quit button have not, we haven't attached any code to them, which we're going to do very quickly just now. But if I was to hit the letter P again, we should actually get out. Oh, the resume game is how we're going to get out of this. So let's go ahead and set up those two buttons real quick, and we know that we are at least getting into, and it is pausing our game. I can't shoot anything, I can't make any sounds, I can't move my character around. We are literally paused. You can even see the smoke back there paused. So let's hit stop on the game, and let's go back into our buttons. So our buttons should be under first person BP. Let's go back. Let's see, first person BP and our buttons. Our buttons are going to be on our maps. So let's go into our maps. Let's go into the pause menu. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to add the code to the resume game button. So let's click on the button, and if you scroll down, once the button has been selected, we can scroll down to the bottom of the details panel, say on clicked, and that will go from the designer to the graph, and it will actually give us a event button or event for when the button is clicked. And off of here, we're going to want to type in cast to first person character. Okay, we want to get the controlled pawn, so get player pawn. All right. And then from there, we want the function called unpause game. So unpause game. And we want to make sure that the target is going back to itself. Okay, so that is the code that we need for the resume button. So let's go ahead and select that, right click on it, and give it a fancy title, resume button pause menu, so we know where it is. So we know that this is coming from the pause menu. Okay, and then we need the second button, which is the quit button. So I believe that's the second button. Let's go and right click there, and they do have different names, and since I only have two buttons, I'm pretty sure that that is the quit button. And let's pull off of this, and let's type in quit game. And the only thing we want to make sure is that this is attached to the right person. So let's type in get player controller. And I think I have dragged off of the wrong area. So let's be more specific. Let's get player controller. There it is. Okay, so now we have our quit button. So let's, whoops. There we go. So with those selected, I'm going to right click and give this a fancy title also. So quit button pause menu. Okay, so at this point we should have everything ready. Let's go ahead and compile and save, and let's see if we can generate our pause by hitting the letter P. So we have generated our pause menu. Let's see if we can quit the game. We were able to quit the game, so let's hit the pause button. Let's see if we can resume the game, and we see the balls. Let's see, mid-air. So that one's paused. You can see the ball mid-air. If I hit resume the game starts immediately where it was. Okay, so that's it. And if we wanted to, just for fun, we can check and see what's going on in the second level, and I would behoove you to go ahead and check all of everything. And let's see if we can hit the pause button here. We can, if we can resume the game, we can hit the pause button, we can, and we can quit the game, and that takes us back to the level that we started in. Fantastic. Okay, so that is the pause menu and how you would generate that, and a neat way of kind of also, when you have lots of buttons, to put them inside the horizontal box, the vertical box, to kind of keep them all aligned, which was really neat. And there it is. Okay, so hope you guys have a wonderful day, and you enjoyed the tutorial. Take care. Bye-bye.